Have you ever felt like you were imprisoned inside your own mind, drained from trying to predict every twist and turn of the future, yet completely stuck and powerless in the present? We often assume that worrying is the highest expression of responsibility. We reassure ourselves that if our mind keeps spinning with worst-case scenarios, it means we care and we're trying our best to protect our life. But pause for a moment and look straight at the truth. Constant, consuming worry is not love or caution. At its core, it is a desperate craving for control over things that were never truly within our power. Imagine your mind as an engine revving at maximum speed while the wheels never touch the ground. It roars, overheats, and burns fuel just to stay in the same place. The fear of losing control pushes you into an endless spiral of thoughts, where you burn your most precious energy only to trade it for exhaustion and confusion. Instead of stopping the storm, it is your worry itself that creates chaos inside, stealing the peace you are tirelessly chasing. We think we're fighting to maintain order, but in reality, we're only binding ourselves tighter to invisible fears. So, how do you escape this psychological trap? Is there a way to find a state of mind as steady as a mountain, unmoved by the storms of life? The answer to this chaos does not lie in time management books or productivity optimization courses. It lies in an ancient system of thought, a philosophy that has existed for thousands of years to help human beings stand firm in the face of history's most brutal upheavals. Today, we are not going to talk about how to change the external world. We are going to step into a journey of exploring Stoicism. There is a harsh yet liberating truth that we often deliberately ignore. Life operates according to its own rules, completely independent from and indifferent to your personal desires. This universe does not owe you convenience, does not owe you fairness, and it certainly does not revolve around your plans. When we refuse to accept this reality, when we try to bend reality to fit the expectations in our minds, we are planting the seeds of our own suffering. The more you fight against the impermanence of life, the more lost, exhausted, and directionless you become. It is a battle you are destined to lose from the very beginning. But Stoicism offers us a different path. It is not an escape, nor is it passive surrender. It is the path of active acceptance and the art of releasing burdens that were never meant to be carried by you. The core of this mindset lies in drawing a clear boundary between two worlds. The inner world, where we hold absolute power over our attitudes, actions, and judgments, and the external world, where things like reputation, wealth, and even health ultimately lie beyond our control. The key to freedom is not in expanding our control outward, but in narrowing our focus inward. In the modern world, where pressure from social media, work, and economic instability is suffocating our peace every single day, these teachings from thousands of years ago have become more pertinent than ever. We are living in an era where uncertainty is the only constant. If we do not equip ourselves with an inner fortress, we will be easily swept away by endless waves of anxiety. In this video, we will not stop at empty theory. We will go deep into analyzing the nature of control, exposing the illusions behind our worries, and most importantly, discovering how to transform Stoic thinking into concrete actions. We will explore how to let go of the heavy burden of trying to play God in your own life, so that you can reclaim the energy that has been stolen from you and finally live a life that is meaningful, whole, and truly free. To truly understand the power of this calm, we have to turn back the clock to the dusty streets of ancient Greece and the brutal battlefields of Rome. Stoicism was not born in silk or in quiet libraries detached from real life. It was forged in the midst of the most devastating upheavals in human history, where war, plague, exile, and political schemes were part of everyday reality. It was in the furnace of that chaos that some of the greatest minds discovered a formula for lasting inner peace. Look at Epictetus, one of the greatest philosophers of this school. He was not a nobleman. He was born a slave. He lived in a crippled body and owned no material possessions, not even the freedom of his own body. And yet, in the midst of those chains, Epictetus discovered a kind of freedom no one could ever take from him: the right to govern his own mind. On the opposite end of society stood Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor in the world at the time. He held the lives of millions in his hands, possessed every treasure, yet his life was a continuous confrontation with betrayal, the loneliness of power, and the nearness of death on the battlefield. The remarkable thing is that despite living in completely opposite circumstances, one having nothing and the other having everything, both of them arrived at the same profound realization. They saw that life moves according to its own way, cold and impartial, not according to the subjective wishes of human beings. The more we try to resist the impermanence of this flow, the deeper we fall into suffering and confusion. They understood that the true tragedy of human beings does not lie in what happens to them, but in the mistaken belief that they can bend reality to serve their ego. Stoic thinking, therefore, is built on the foundation of acceptance and letting go. Is the only path that leads to true freedom. It is the wisdom to recognize your limits in the vastness of the universe. The golden key the Stoics handed down to us is the ability to clearly distinguish what belongs to us, our actions, attitudes, and judgments, and what does not belong to us, outcomes, reputation, and the behavior of others. When you stop fighting what cannot be changed, that is when you truly begin to master the game. The first and most vital principle at the core of this way of thinking is the dichotomy of control. At first glance, it sounds simple, almost obvious. But understanding it on the level of language and truly living it in every breath is the difference between a person who lives in constant fear and someone who becomes a master of calm. To begin, we need to redefine the nature of the game we are playing every single day. Stoic thinking draws a bright, inviolable red line between two opposing domains. On one side are the things that belong to us, the internal. On the other side are the things that do not belong to us, the external. Epictetus, the great teacher of this school, asserted that the root of all human suffering, anxiety, and disappointment does not come from events themselves, but from the fact that we place our trust and effort in the wrong domain. So let's look deeply at what we actually control. These are our judgments, our impulses, our desires, our attitudes, and our actions in the present moment. That is the entirety of your kingdom, and within that territory, you are the sovereign with absolute power. But tragedy begins the moment we step beyond that border and try to invade the external. That includes our body, which can be attacked by illness at any time, our possessions, which can be erased by the market, our reputation, which depends entirely on the thoughts of others, and the final outcome of all our efforts. This is where the paradox of control appears. We are often taught that successful people are those who control everything, control the market, control their employees, control the future. But Stoicism reveals a much harsher truth. The more you try to control what lies beyond your reach, the more you lose your real power. Let's break down this psychological mechanism. When you tie your happiness and inner peace to a specific outcome, like having to win this project or needing others to like you, you are unconsciously handing over the steering wheel of your life to external variables. You become a slave to random factors. If the market changes, you collapse. If someone changes their mind, you panic. At that point, worry is no longer just a passing emotion. It becomes the ruler of your mind. That anxiety is really the scream of the ego desperately clinging to things that are, by nature, impermanent. The paradox is that the more you try to control the external world, the more powerless you feel inside. The tighter you clench your fist to hold water, the faster it slips through your fingers. When your mind is obsessed with having to control the outcome, you lose clarity of thought and your ability to adapt your two most important weapons for actually achieving that outcome. Worry creates a thick fog that clouds your vision, making you react impulsively, irrationally, and fearfully. You burn your energy on imagining worst-case scenarios that haven't happened yet, instead of pouring that energy into taking action in the present. On the other hand, when you accept that you do not control the outcome, you do not become weak or passive. This is where many people misunderstand Stoicism. Letting go of control does not mean letting go of effort. It means reclaiming all the energy that has been scattered into fear, waiting, and begging the outside world, and concentrating all of that power into one thing: action. The key here is a shift in focus. You don't release the arrow with an obsession that it must hit the bullseye, because a sudden gust of wind could always alter its path. Instead, you focus your entire mind, body, and technique on the moment of drawing the bow, on your breath, on your stance, on releasing the string in the best way you possibly can. That is the internal. Once the string is released and the arrow has flown, the outcome belongs to the external. Any worrying, shouting, or praying after that moment is completely meaningless. When you truly grasp this paradox, a powerful transformation begins to unfold. Calm creates impact. When you stop fighting reality and stop trying to bend the world to your will, you radiate a grounded, steady energy. In a world where everyone is panicking, where everyone is frantically trying to control illusions, the one who remains composed, the one who simply focuses on doing their part as well as possible, is the one who holds real power. The freedom that the dichotomy of control brings is priceless. It releases you from the crushing burden of feeling responsible for the entire universe. You are not responsible for whether it rains. You are only responsible for whether you bring an umbrella. You are not responsible for whether your boss is in a good mood. You are only responsible for the quality of the report you submit. When this boundary is clearly drawn, anxiety begins to dissolve, making room for sharp focus. You act from a place of calm instead of panic, and from that stable inner state, your chances of success multiply. That is the beauty of the paradox. Only when you are willing to accept any outcome do you become free enough to create the best possible outcome. So, at its core, eliminating anxiety is not about trying to guarantee that the future will be safe. It's about building an inner conviction that no matter what the future holds, you will have the capacity to face it and handle it. It is the shift from craving control over the world to mastering yourself. To truly feel the weight of this paradox, let your imagination take us out of abstract concepts and into a classic Stoic metaphor: the image of a sailor in the midst of a raging storm. Imagine you are the captain standing at the bow of the ship in the middle of the vast ocean. The sky is pitch black, thunder is roaring, and towering waves are rearing up as if they want to swallow your tiny ship whole. In that life or death moment, you have two choices in terms of your attitude. The first choice, which is also the instinctive reaction of most of us: you panic. You scream at the storm, you curse the waves, you beg the wind to stop blowing, and you let fear paralyze your hands. You pour all your mental energy into questions like, "Why is this happening to me?" And "Please, just make it stop." But ask yourself, does the storm care about your screams? Does the ocean become calm because of your anxiety? The answer is absolutely not. The storm is external. It operates according to the laws of the atmosphere, completely outside your control. Your screaming not only fails to change the direction of the wind, but worse, it burns up the precious energy you should be using to keep a steady hand on the wheel. That is the embodiment of worry. It creates more chaos in your mind without stopping any of the chaos outside. Now, let's look at the second choice, the choice of someone who is steeped in Stoic thinking. This captain also sees the storm and feels the danger, but he accepts the reality that the storm is here and he cannot drive it away. Instead of wasting strength fighting reality, he pulls all of his focus back to what he can control, the internal. He focuses on the tension of the sails, the angle of the rudder, calming the crew, and guiding the ship to ride with the waves instead of crashing head-on into them. He is not trying to defeat the sea. He is trying to defeat his own fear so he can steer the ship as well as possible in those conditions. And what is the result? He has no guarantee he will survive, but his chances of survival are 1,000 times higher than those of the captain who is busy screaming. Bring that image back into the reality of your modern life. Consider a situation I believe every one of us has experienced. Being stuck in traffic when you're already late for an important meeting. You sit in your car, staring at the dense, unmoving line of vehicles ahead. The clock keeps ticking, and every passing minute feels like a knife cutting into your patience. Blood rushes to your face, your hands grip the steering wheel so tightly they turn white, and inside your head, a fierce inner battle is raging. You're angry at the traffic system. You regret not taking another route. And you're afraid of your boss's reaction and the consequences of being late. That is the state of screaming at the storm. You are trying to control the flow of traffic, the external, with your emotions. But does your anger make the red light turn green any faster? Does your anxiety lift your car up and fly it over the crowd? Not at all. The only thing worry achieves in that moment is turning you into the worst version of yourself. When you finally arrive at the meeting late or on time, you walk into the room exhausted, sweating, scowling, and radiating panic. You have already lost the battle before the meeting even begins, because you allowed external circumstances to steal your composure. By contrast, if you apply the dichotomy of control, how would you handle this situation? You acknowledge, I'm stuck in traffic. This is reality. I cannot change the traffic density. Immediately, you let go of the effort to control the traffic. You redirect your energy toward action. The internal, you call ahead to inform your counterpart, speaking with sincerity and calm. Then you use the waiting time to review your preparation materials, listen to something relaxing, or simply practice breathing to keep your heart rate steady. When you arrive, even if you're 15 minutes late, you walk into the room composed, offer a proper apology, and begin your presentation with your full confidence intact. Your counterpart may not be happy that you're late, but they will be impressed by your professionalism and your ability to manage your emotions in a crisis. Another beautiful metaphor for this paradox is holding sand in the palm of your hand. If you keep your hand open and gentle, the sand rests there peacefully. But if you clench your hand, trying to grip every grain out of fear of losing it, the sand slips through your fingers. The tighter you squeeze, the less you hold. Life works the same way. When you try to control everything from your partner's emotions and your coworkers' attitudes to the fluctuations of the market, you are clenching your fist. You create pressure, suffocation, and ultimately, collapse. Worry, at its core, is resistance against the natural flow. It's like trying to block a river with your bare hands. Not only do you fail to stop the water, you also get swept away by the current. Freedom only comes when you learn to become the water moving around the rocks, flowing through the bends, flexible yet steadfast in your direction toward the ocean. These examples reveal a simple yet powerful truth. We do not suffer because of what happens. We suffer because of how we respond to what happens. Being able to distinguish between the storm, what cannot be controlled, and the wheel, what can be controlled, is the first step to walking out of the prison of anxiety and touching true inner freedom. Continuing our journey of freeing ourselves from the burden of control, we move into the second core principle, one of the most misunderstood, yet also one of the most transformative pillars of Stoicism, the combination of composure and detachment. When people picture someone practicing Stoicism, popular culture often paints them as cold, emotionless figures, walking stones who never laugh, never cry. Many believe that to attain inner peace, one must eliminate all emotion, become numb to pain and indifferent to joy. But that is a harmful misunderstanding. Stoicism does not teach you to become a machine. It teaches you to become a master. Let's start with the idea of composure. Calmness is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to control your response to that emotion. A strong person is not someone who never feels fear, anger, or anxiety. They are still human, with a normal nervous system. Their heart still races in the face of danger. Their blood still heats up when they are insulted. The difference is this: they do not allow those initial emotions to seize the wheel and dictate their behavior. In psychology, there is an incredibly important space between stimulus, what happens to you, and response, how you react. For anxious, reactive people, this space is almost non-existent. They react instantly on impulse. If someone shouts, they shout back. If they face difficulty, they complain. Composure is the art of widening that space. It is the ability to pause and observe the rising anger inside you, as if you were standing on the riverbank watching a flood, instead of jumping in and letting it sweep you away. In that precious moment of pause, wisdom and reason are allowed to speak. This is the very definition of inner freedom. You are free from being a slave to your impulses. Alongside composure is the art of detachment. This is a sensitive concept, because the line between detachment and indifference is thin, yet the difference in essence is enormous. Indifference is the state of apathy, lifelessness, and irresponsibility. I don't care about anything. It is the withdrawal of a coward. Detachment, on the other hand, is the energy-preserving strategy of the wise. I care, but I will not let the outcome destroy me. Think of detachment as an invisible protective layer surrounding your mind. In modern life, we are constantly bombarded by thousands of pieces of information, opinions, and petty problems. Social media wants you outraged, the news wants you afraid, coworkers want you involved in gossip and drama. Without detachment, your mind becomes like a sponge, soaking up all the toxic waste of your environment. You become entangled in everything. One negative comment online keeps you up at night. One frown from your boss ruins your entire day. Detachment means you learn to filter what is allowed to enter the sacred temple of your inner world. You participate in life. You give your best at work. You love deeply in your relationships. But you maintain a safe psychological distance. You do not fuse your self-worth with external things. If a project fails, you see it as data to learn from, not as proof that you're worthless. If someone leaves you, you feel the sadness, but you do not let that sadness define your entire existence. The power of detachment is that it preserves clarity. When you are too attached to something, you develop blind spots, as if you pressed your face right up against an oil painting and can only see messy streaks of color. Only when you step back and create distance can you see the whole picture. A great leader is one who can detach from the chaos of a crisis long enough to see the exit path that panicked people cannot. Even more, the combination of composure and detachment creates an incredibly magnetic form of soft power, what we might call the charisma of calm. In a loud world full of overreactions, calmness becomes a rare asset. Human beings naturally seek safety. When crisis hits, we don't look to the person who's screaming the loudest or running in circles. We look to the one who is standing still, breathing deeply, and keeping a steady gaze. Your calm is contagious. When you maintain composure, you become an emotional anchor for those around you. You don't need to raise your voice to assert authority. Your quiet, grounded presence speaks louder than any shouting ever could. On the flip side, when you allow anxiety to rule you, you spread that same insecurity to your team and your family. So, detachment is not about cutting yourself off from the world. It is about changing the quality of your connection to it. Instead of connecting through dependency and fear, you connect through self-mastery and compassion. You are no longer a leaf tossed around by the wind, but a mountain the wind simply passes through. You observe emotions without judging them. You take action without being obsessed with outcomes, and you live in a constantly changing world with an unshakable inner state. That is the highest form of mental energy management we should all be moving toward. To truly feel the magnetic pull of composure, imagine you're sitting on a flight passing through severe turbulence. The plane is shaking violently. Luggage is falling out of the overhead bins, and screams begin to rise from the rows of passengers. The air is thick with fear, and chaos blankets that cramped space. In that moment of sheer panic, what is it that can steady your heartbeat again? Is it the sight of flight attendants running up and down the aisle with terror on their faces? Absolutely not. The only thing that can rescue your mind in that moment is the captain's voice coming through the speakers. Not so much what he says, but how he says it. A deep, slow, unshaken voice. Ladies and gentlemen, we are passing through an area of turbulence. The crew has the situation under control. Please fasten your seatbelts and remain seated. The absolute calm in that voice is the strongest tranquilizer there is. If the captain were also panicking, shouting, or showing signs of losing control, the trust of hundreds of people would collapse instantly, and the real disaster would begin from that fear, not from the storm itself. This example proves a simple truth. In every crisis, the person who keeps the coolest head is the one who holds the power to lead. When the world around us seems to be collapsing, people instinctively search for a solid anchor. Calmness is not just a private emotional state. It is a signal of capability. It tells the world, I am not being defeated by this situation. I am still thinking, and I am still in command. This is how composure creates influence. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. Your quiet, grounded presence is itself a roaring thunder in a panicked crowd. Now, let's bring the principle of detachment into a more familiar setting, the workplace and criticism. Imagine you've spent 2 sleepless weeks completing a project you deeply care about. You present it with pride, only to be hit with a cold bucket of harsh criticism from your boss or client. They tear it apart, nitpicking every detail, even using words that feel like personal attacks. Our instinctive reaction, the animal part of us, immediately triggers a defense mechanism. Blood rushes to your head. You feel insulted and wounded, and you want to snap back to protect your ego. Or, on the opposite end, you collapse inside, feel useless, and want to give up. In both cases, you are attached. You have allowed someone else's words to penetrate and wound your inner world. Someone who practices detachment handles this situation completely differently. They activate their ability to emotionally detach. They treat the criticism as incoming data, not as arrows aimed at their heart. They imagine themselves standing behind an invisible wall of reinforced glass. The other person's words hit the glass and fall to the ground. You see them, you hear them, but you do not let them pierce your skin. They ask themselves, in this emotional mess, is there any useful information? If the other person is right about a technical mistake, they accept that information and correct it. That's growth. If the other person is simply dumping their own irrational anger, the Stoic practitioner smiles inwardly and brushes it off like dust on their shoulder. They don't waste a single calorie of energy on anger or self-pity, because they understand that other people's opinions belong to the external, the realm they do not control. This detachment allows them to stay clear-headed and focus on what matters most, solving the problem. While others are busy acting out emotional dramas playing the victim or the avenger, the person with detachment has already started working on the solution. They tune out the noisy interference and go straight to the core. A beautiful metaphor for this state is the lighthouse. In the dark night at sea, the waves crash fiercely against the base of the tower. Storm winds try to topple it. Water tries to drown it. But the lighthouse does not fight the waves, nor does it run from the storm. It simply stands. It remains separate from the chaotic movement of the ocean. And, precisely because it stands still so steadfastly, it can shine its light to guide other ships. If the lighthouse swayed and trembled with every wave, its light would become meaningless. Your life is the same. If your mood rises and falls with every compliment and criticism, if your energy is drained by every small annoyance in the day, you will never have enough light to illuminate your own path, let alone lead anyone else. Detachment, therefore, is an act of courage. The courage not to be swept away with the crowd. The courage to keep your mind clear, even while walking through the mud. When you can do this, you'll notice a fascinating paradox. The less you cling to what others think of you, the more they respect you. The less you try to control everything, the more things naturally fall into place around your calm center. That is the well-earned reward for those who dare to let go in order to truly take control. We've learned how to let go of forced control, how to stay composed, and how to detach ourselves from external turbulence. But this journey cannot be complete until we face the biggest monster hiding in the shadows of the mind: the fear of uncertainty. This is the third core principle, completely transforming your relationship with fear, turning it from your greatest enemy into your sharpest guiding tool. By biological design, the human brain is programmed to seek safety and order. In primitive times, uncertainty meant death. A strange sound in the bushes could be a predator. An unfamiliar fruit could be poisonous. So we evolved to crave certainty. We want to know exactly what tomorrow will look like, whether this investment will be profitable, whether that person will love us forever. When we don't get definite answers, the brain sounds the red alarm we call anxiety. However, in the modern world, this mechanism has become outdated and counterproductive. We're no longer facing wild animals, but we tremble in front of a rejection email, a risky business opportunity, or a decision to change careers. We treat fear like a giant stop sign. When we feel scared, our instinct is to turn back and retreat to the comfort of the familiar. But Stoicism and modern psychology invite us to reconsider. Fear is not a stop sign. It is a map. Engrave this into your mind. Fear is a sign that growth is approaching. Why are you afraid? You're not afraid of things you've already mastered. You're not afraid of brushing your teeth, taking a walk, or doing the same repetitive tasks every day. You only feel fear when you stand at the threshold of something new, something that demands you stretch beyond your current limits. Therefore, the presence of fear is proof that you're approaching the edge of your comfort zone, the very place where real growth begins. If your life is completely free of fear, that is not a sign of peace. It's a sign of stagnation. Instead of running away or trying to eliminate fear, a futile effort, because fear is part of being human, learn to observe it. Detach from it, as we discussed earlier, and see fear as information. What is it telling you? It's telling you that this matters to you. It's telling you that the outcome of this action has meaning. When you change your perspective, fear shifts from being a prison warden to a strict teacher, pointing out exactly where you need to focus your energy to break through. Managing fear is how you unlock potential. When you no longer let fear manipulate your behavior, you begin to use the adrenaline it creates as fuel for focus and thorough preparation. A brave person is not someone who doesn't feel fear, but someone who takes action even while fear is screaming in their ear. Going deeper into the nature of fear, we eventually confront its root: uncertainty. We often spend our whole lives building fortresses of certainty, stable jobs, insurance policies, retirement plans. We convince ourselves that if we arrange everything perfectly, we can eliminate risk. But this is an illusion. Life is fundamentally chaotic and impermanent. Certainty is only a temporary, fragile state. Stoic thinking teaches us a costly but invaluable lesson. Uncertainty is where opportunity is born. Reflect on this. If everything were certain, if the future were already scripted and you knew the exact outcome of every decision, what would be left of life? It would become a boring loop, no surprises, no discoveries, and most importantly, no room for creativity or breakthroughs. In the comfort zone of certainty, nothing new is ever created. Every great invention, every timeless work of art, every powerful business empire was conceived and born in the womb of uncertainty. So instead of fearing the darkness of the unknown future, learn to dance with it. You cannot control every variable. You cannot see the entire road ahead. But you can train yourself in one thing: adaptability. Success in the 21st century does not belong to the strongest or the smartest, but to those who adapt best to change. The most influential people are the ones who keep moving forward even when nothing is guaranteed. They trust their ability to figure things out more than they trust any perfect plan. They understand that waiting until things are secure enough, perfectly timed, or certain is a techie trap that leads to permanent paralysis. Accepting uncertainty means accepting that you will walk into the fog. You don't need headlights that shine for miles. You only need enough light for the next step. When you dare to move without a guaranteed outcome, you are claiming sovereignty over your life. You are no longer a victim waiting for fate's verdict. You become a creator, ready to mold whatever uncertainty throws at you into opportunity. In summary, this third principle demands a deep inner transformation. Stop searching for absolute safety. because it does not exist. Stop treating fear as your enemy, because it is your compass. And most importantly, embrace uncertainty as a companion, because within that chaos, the greatest version of you is waiting to be awakened. When you make peace with not knowing, you become unstoppable, because nothing can threaten or hinder someone who is willing to walk into the dark carrying a flame of inner trust. To clearly visualize what it means to accept uncertainty, imagine you're driving along a winding mountain pass at night. Thick fog covers everything, and your headlights can only illuminate a short distance, maybe 10 meters ahead. You can't see the destination, you can't see the sharp turns further down the road, and you have no idea whether any obstacles are hiding in the darkness. In this situation, what would someone controlled by fear do? They would slam on the brakes. They would pull over to the side, turn off the engine, and refuse to move until the fog clears or until sunrise conditions they cannot control and have no idea when will come. They demand a guarantee, a clear line of sight for the entire journey before they're willing to press the gas. And as a result, they stay stuck on the mountain, cold and afraid, while time continues to move forward without mercy. By contrast, someone who accepts uncertainty keeps driving. They don't need to see the entire road stretching for hundreds of kilometers. They understand that, to reach the destination, they only need to see the 10 meters in front of them and drive those 10 meters well. When they move forward those 10 meters, the next 10 naturally appear under the headlights. And so, by focusing on handling each small segment of reality, they make it through the night and arrive safely. This is the perfect metaphor for our lives. You will never see the whole picture of your future, but you will always have enough light for your next step. Look at the reality of those we consider successful or highly influential in society. We often mistakenly believe they possess some prophetic ability, that they have a detailed map and know exactly how everything will unfold before they start. The truth is the complete opposite. Great entrepreneurs, groundbreaking artists, daring explorers, they all begin with a vague hypothesis and thousands of lurking risks. Take the story of a young entrepreneur. If he waits for certainty, waits for the market to be perfectly stable, waits for his product to be flawless, waits for everyone's approval, he will never start. That is the trap of perfectionism, or more accurately, the elegant disguise of fear. Instead, he chooses to act in the absence of full information. He launches an unfinished product to receive feedback, accepts criticism, and accepts failure in the early stages. It is precisely the act of throwing himself into uncertainty that generates real-world data, allowing him to adjust and grow. His success does not come from a flawless plan on paper, but from his adaptability to the chaotic variables of the marketplace. Another powerful example lies in the field of medicine. When faced with a new disease, with no established treatment protocol, doctors cannot simply fold their arms and do nothing just because they are not 100% sure of the outcome. They must act based on the best knowledge available at that moment, observe the patient's response, and adjust continuously. They accept risk. They accept the psychological burden of not knowing for sure. But that very willingness to engage is what opens the path to a life-saving cure. If they let the fear of being wrong paralyze them, no lives would be saved. We see this clearly in personal relationships as well. How many of us hesitate to express our feelings, hesitate to start something new, simply because we're afraid of getting hurt, afraid of heartbreak, afraid that if it doesn't lead anywhere, then what? We demand guaranteed commitment from the future before we're willing to open our hearts in the present. But love, like life, is a gamble of trust. You cannot taste joy if you're unwilling to risk pain. The one who dares to love, dares to trust, and dares to accept the uncertainty of another human heart is the one who is truly alive. The one who keeps hesitating, calculating, and overprotecting themselves from all risk will end up with safe loneliness, but a bitter, cold kind of safety. The power of acting amid uncertainty also lies in how it shatters the illusion of the perfect moment. We often fool ourselves with lines like, "I'll do it when I'm ready, when I have enough money, when the kids are older." But ready is a mental state that never arrives on news, its own. Confidence is not born from thinking. It is born from doing. You don't need confidence to step into the dark. You step into the dark. And confidence is formed when you realize you can handle what's in there. Returning to Stoic thinking, Stoic philosophers often remind us, we do not control the length of our life, but we do control its depth. Worrying about what hasn't happened yet, about disasters that might occur, is exactly how we lose the depth of the present moment. Instead of trying to build an impenetrable fortress to block every possible risk, a hopeless mission build for yourself, the mindset of a surfer. The surfer never knows how big the next wave will be, or exactly when it will crash. He doesn't control the ocean, but he trusts his skill, trusts his ability to keep his balance. When the wave comes, he doesn't panic or resist it. He rides it and turns it into a beautiful line across the water. Seen through this lens, uncertainty is no longer a terrifying fog, but an open space full of potential. It is the only place where courage can exist, because if you knew the result in advance, there would be no need for courage at all. It is the not knowing that acts as the catalyst for sharpening your intuition, building your resilience, and discovering hidden strengths you would never know you had if you always stayed in the safe zone of certainty. Remember this: the best stories of your life will never be written on calm, sunny days. They are written in the moments you dare to take the wheel and drive through the night, trusting fiercely in the 10 meters of light in front of you. We've traveled together through a long journey of thought, from dissecting the nature of anxiety, understanding the paradox of control, to befriending uncertainty. But philosophy, no matter how profound, will remain nothing more than lifeless ink on a page if it is never carried out of the library and into the everyday battles of your life. On Monday morning, when your alarm goes off, when you're faced with an urgent email, or when your bank account flashes red, that is when Stoicism truly needs to speak up. So the most important question now is this: how can we modern people, living in a digital age, full of distraction and pressure, live like the ancient sages? How do we turn these principles into flesh and blood, into natural reflexes instead of mere theory? Below is a practical roadmap, a blueprint for action to help you begin reclaiming your power and redirecting your precious energy toward what truly matters. 1. The sacred pause technique. The first and most crucial step to breaking the loop of anxiety is learning how to stop. In today's fast-paced world, we tend to react on autopilot. When something negative happens, someone cuts you off in traffic, your boss criticizes you, or the internet suddenly goes out, our biological reflex is to immediately trigger anger or fear. The practical application here is to train yourself in what we'll call the sacred pause. When a stimulus appears, instead of reacting right away, force yourself to stop for a few seconds. Take a deep breath. In that brief stillness, say to yourself, "This is an event, my reaction is a choice." This seemingly simple act has incredible power. It cuts the circuit of impulsive emotion, preventing the lizard brain, the primitive part of your brain, from hijacking control. It creates space for rational thinking to step in and take the wheel. Remember, you can't control whether a bird flies over your head, but you can control whether you let it build a nest in your hair. The pause is the moment you shoo the bird away. 2. The sorting ritual, the control test. Once you've created that initial calm, the next step is to run the core. Stoic exercise, the control test. This isn't something you do once in your life. It's something you'll need to practice dozens of times a day until it becomes instinct. Imagine you have 2 baskets in your mind. The first basket is labeled internal, mine, and the second is labeled external, not mine. Every problem that worries you must be picked up and placed into one of these 2 baskets. For example, you're anxious about an upcoming job interview. Will the interviewer like me? That's someone else's feelings. External. Will there be candidates better than me? That's an objective reality. External. Have I prepared my resume and materials thoroughly? That's your action. Internal. My attitude and sincerity during the interview. That's your attitude. Internal. The golden rule here is, look at the external basket and say goodbye to everything in it. Ruthlessly cut the emotional cords tying you to those things. Worrying about them is pointless. It's a waste of mental resources. Then, pour 100% of your focus, effort, and passion into the internal basket. This is where energy liberation happens. You'll be amazed at how much lighter you feel when you stop trying to control the whole world. The energy that used to leak into fear and overthinking is now compressed and redirected into fueling action. 3. Turning anxiety into action. Action over anxiety. We often think we need to feel good before we can act. But behavioral psychology and Stoicism both point to the opposite. Action creates emotion. Anxiety grows in the soil of inaction. When you lie on the couch, thinking about the future, the monsters in your head only get bigger. The only way to kill anxiety is to move. Don't wait for a perfect plan. Apply the principle of micro-actions. If you're anxious about writing a book, don't think about 300 pages, think about writing the first sentence. If you're afraid for your health, don't obsess over a long, grueling weight loss journey. Think about putting on your shoes and walking for 5 minutes. Once you start doing something, no matter how small, your brain switches from defense mode to problem-solving mode. Inner strength comes from being proactive. When you move, you create momentum. That purposeful busyness occupies the mental space where anxiety used to live. Turn fear into fuel. You're afraid of being poor? Use that fear to work harder, to learn new skills. You're afraid of illness? Use it to eat better, to take care of your body. Don't let fear paralyze you, let it push you forward. 4. Applying Stoicism to relationships and social media. In this hyper-connected age, one of the biggest sources of insecurity comes from relationships and constant comparison on social media. This is where detachment must be applied ruthlessly. When scrolling, you see other people's glamorous lives and feel inferior. Remember the lesson of detachment. What you see is just a curated surface. External, not a reflection of your true worth. Internal, practice selective indifference toward these shallow illusions. Treat social media as a tool, not as a measuring stick of your value. In real-life relationships, we often suffer because we want to change others. We want our spouse to be tidier. We want our colleagues to be more agreeable. Stoicism teaches a harsh but liberating truth. You cannot change anyone except yourself. Piling expectations onto others only brings disappointment to you and suffocation to them. Instead, focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Love, be patient, be kind. That's your internal domain. When you change how you show up to the world often changes how it responds to you. And if it doesn't, at least you maintain inner peace, knowing you've lived in alignment with your conscience. 5. Practicing amor fati, loving your fate. The highest application of Stoicism is not just enduring hardship but learning to love it. The concept of amor fati calls us to embrace everything that happens in our life, good or bad, with a kind of inner joy. When you fail, instead of asking, "Why me?" say, "Good. Lost your job? Good. This might be the chance to find a path that fits you better. Got sick? Good. This is your opportunity to slow down and appreciate your body. Ended a relationship? Good. This is the lesson that will grow you into someone wiser in love. This mindset turns every obstacle into the path itself. It doesn't allow you to play the victim. When you love your fate, you become unbeatable. Nothing can truly harm someone who treats adversity as fuel for their inner fire. 6. Creating morning and evening rituals. To maintain this mental state, you need anchors throughout your day. Morning, premeditatio malorum. Don't just wake up and dive straight into your phone. Take 5 minutes to mentally preview your day. Anticipate potential challenges. Today, I might get stuck in traffic. I might deal with a difficult client. I might feel tired. This is not pessimism. This is mental armor. When those things actually happen, you won't be shocked. You'll smile and think, "I knew you were coming, and I'm ready." Evening, review. Before bed, look back on your day as an impartial observer. Don't judge or beat yourself up. Ask, Where did I stay in control of my emotions today? When did I let anxiety win? What can I do better tomorrow? This continuous self-awareness is the path to refinement. 7. Start small. The power of consistency. Finally, remember that training the mind is just like training a muscle. You cannot expect to become a Stoic master overnight after watching one video. There will be days you fail. There will be moments you lose your temper, panic, and want to give up. That is completely normal. Don't punish yourself for being imperfect. Progress matters more than perfection. If today you manage to pause once before exploding in anger, that's a victory. If today you worry 5% less than yesterday, that's success. Be patient with yourself. Building an unshakable inner life is a marathon, not a sprint. Start with the tiniest things. When you're waiting at a red light, instead of getting irritated, practice patience. When it rains, instead of complaining, practice acceptance. These small, ordinary moments are your training ground. When you can master the little things, you'll find yourself steady as a rock when life's tsunamis hit. Modern life, with its relentless pace, will always try to sweep you away. It will always throw new reasons to be afraid in your face. But now, you hold in your hands the toolkit of some of history's greatest minds. You understand that peace is not a place without noise, but the ability to keep your mind still in the very center of the storm. Remember, the goal is not to eliminate emotion or become numb. The goal is to stop being a slave to emotion. You have the right to feel anxious, but you also have the right to decide that anxiety will not dictate your behavior. So, how do we weave these principles into our busy lives today? The answer is simple. Live intentionally. Don't live like a leaf floating downstream, live like the one holding the oar. The current may be strong, the wind may be against you, but the oar and the direction are still in your hands. When you release the obsession with controlling outcomes, you receive an invaluable gift. The freedom to enjoy the process. You begin to work for the joy of working, to love for the joy of giving, and to live for the joy of being present. That is the true meaning of living. When the weight of anxiety is lifted, your shoulders grow lighter, and you'll be surprised by just how far you can go. Start today, not tomorrow, not when things calm down. Right now, in the middle of the mess. Because life does not wait for you to be ready. Life simply happens, and the only way not to miss it is to step courageously into its flow, with an open heart and a steadfast mind. Of course, applying this philosophy in real life has never been a path lined with roses. We have to be honest with each other. Going against millions of years of biological evolution, where the brain has been hardwired to overreact to fear, is an immense challenge. There will be days when instinct wins over reason, and you'll find yourself falling back into the pit of panic. That is completely normal, and it is an inevitable part of the training. One of the most common objections, or more accurately, the biggest fear that keeps people away from this way of living, comes in the form of a question. If I let go of my need to control and accept reality as it is, will I become passive, unambitious, and just drift through life? Many people worry that if they stop obsessing over outcomes, they will lose the drive to climb to the top. This is where we need to draw a clear line between resignation and acceptance. Resignation is the attitude of a defeated person. I won't do anything because the result doesn't matter anyway. That is laziness disguised as philosophy. Acceptance in the Stoic sense, on the other hand, is the attitude of a warrior. I will fight with everything I have in this battle, but I accept that victory or defeat also depends on the tides of circumstance. The difference lies in the quality of the action. History has, in fact, proven the exact opposite of the fear of becoming passive. The greatest practitioners of Stoicism were not hermits hiding in caves. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor, carrying the entire Roman Empire on his shoulders. Seneca was a powerful and wealthy statesman. They did not use this philosophy to escape responsibility, they used it as spiritual armor to step into the harshest arenas of life. When you remove the fear of failure and the pressure to be perfect, you do not become lazy. On the contrary, you become bolder, more willing to take risks, and more resilient. You dare to attempt great things because you are no longer paralyzed by the thought of, what if I fail? Calm does not kill ambition. It purifies it. It strips ambition of the toxic residues of anxiety, leaving you with a source of motivation that is cleaner, sharper, and more enduring than ever before. In the end, after all the psychological insights and mindset strategies, we return to the simplest yet greatest truth of Stoicism. This life was not created for you to control, it was created for you to experience. We spend so much time trying to bend the world to our will that we forget to actually live in it. When you finally set down the heavy burden of anxiety, when you stop playing the judge who labels every event as good or bad, that is when you begin to step out of mere existence and truly touch life. You start to notice the sky looking a little bluer, your breathing a little lighter, and your hardships no longer as walls blocking your way, but as steps lifting you higher. Remember this. In a world that is becoming louder and more chaotic by the day, psychological steadiness is not just a shield that protects you. It is also a torch that lights the way for others. Composure is ultimate strength. It is the most powerful declaration of a free soul. Don't wait for the storm to pass. Learn to dance in the rain with an unshakable state of mind. If these ideas have reached something deep inside you, if you found here a key to unlock the prison of your own mind, then our journey has only just begun. Don't treat this video as a temporary painkiller. Turn it into a way of life. I invite you to join a community of people who are on this same path of building inner strength. Hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next lessons on self-development and applied philosophy. Leave a comment below sharing the biggest fear you're facing right now, or one action you commit to taking today. Your story could be the spark that inspires thousands of others. And share this video with friends or loved ones who are wrestling with anxiety, because peace is the most precious gift you can give. Now, turn off the screen, take a deep breath, and step back out into the world. Not with the fear of a victim, but with the proud composure of someone who is truly in command.